$1 million. For generations, that was the number. It was the finish line, the absolute sign that you'd made it. But let's be honest, in today's world, is that number still the gold standard for being rich? We're going to break down the data and see if $1 million really makes you wealthy anymore. Okay, get this. According to some recent research, only about a third of people with over $1 million in investable assets actually feel wealthy. That means the vast majority, almost 2/3, of the people who've hit that classic goal don't even see themselves as rich. How crazy is that?
So that's the big question, right? If having a seven-figure net worth doesn't give you that feeling of being wealthy, then what does? And how much money does it really take to finally feel financially secure?
This whole disconnect is what we're going to call the millionaire paradox. It's this weird, modern puzzle where the traditional symbols of success just don't guarantee that feeling of security anymore. To really get to the bottom of this paradox, we have to be clear about who we're even talking about. Because it turns out, the term millionaire can mean some very, very different things. Let's break down the three main definitions. All right, first up is the broadest definition, the one you hear about most, net worth. This is kind of the big picture number. You take everything you own, your house, your investments, your car, and then you subtract everything you owe, like your mortgage and any other loans. And here's the thing. Using this really broad definition, the number of millionaires is shockingly high. We're talking about roughly 18% of all households in the United States. Think about that for a second. That's nearly 1 in every 5 families. But here's the catch. That net worth number includes things you can't exactly spend easily, like the value of your house. So let's get a bit more specific and look at our second group, the retirement millionaires. These are the folks who have saved up over $1 million in things like their 401ks or IRAs. It's real money for sure, but it's largely locked away until they retire. And whoa, look at how that number just plummets once we apply this new filter. Now we're down to only about 4.6% of U.S. households. We've gone from nearly 1 in 5 all the way down to less than 1 in 20. That's a huge drop. And finally, we get to the definition that financial professionals consider the real measure of wealth: investable assets. This is your liquid money, the cash, stocks, and bonds you can access right now. And crucially, this definition does not include the value of your main home. When you apply this strictest filter, the number shrinks all the way down to just 2.4% of households. And this gets right to the heart of the paradox. The reason so many millionaires don't feel wealthy is because their fortune isn't in their checking account. For most of them, they're simply rich on paper. This whole idea of being rich on paper brings us to something called the liquidity paradox. And it makes you wonder, if the wealth is there, why is so much of it locked away and so hard to get to? Now, this is where it gets really interesting. This chart breaks down where people hold their wealth. Just look at that middle column for households between the 75th and 99th percentiles. This is where most of our everyday millionaires are. A massive 59% of their net worth is in real estate. Now compare that to the top 1% where business equity and stocks are king. It's a completely different portfolio. In fact, if you dig into the data for households in that $1 to $2 million range, you find that a full 2/3 of their wealth is illiquid. It's tied up in the value of their house and their retirement accounts. And you can't exactly pay for your groceries with a fraction of your home equity, you know? This all points to the most crucial distinction of all. What is the purpose of the wealth? For most everyday millionaires, their wealth is about utility. It's tied up in things they use, like their house. But for the truly wealthy, wealth is about yield. Their assets aren't just sitting there, they are actively working to generate more income. That is the fundamental difference.
But look, the numbers are only half the story. To really solve the millionaire paradox, we have to dive into the psychology of wealth and the powerful reasons why it often never ever feels like enough. There are a few key psychological hurdles at play here. First, there's the comparison trap. Millionaires often compare themselves to people who are even wealthier, which makes their own fortune feel small. Then there's the location gap. $1 million buys a vastly different lifestyle in Manhattan, Kansas than in Manhattan, New York. You also have shifting goalposts. As your income grows, your desires and expenses tend to grow right along with it. And finally, there's the constant pressure of inflation, just eroding the real value of that money over time. Every single one of these things chips away at the feeling of being rich. Okay, so if $1 million isn't the magic number anymore, then what is? Let's pull all this information together and redefine what it actually means to be rich today.
So it's pretty clear the meaning of $1 million has fundamentally changed. It's not that definitive finish line anymore. Instead, it's just one complex and often pretty inaccessible milestone on a much longer financial journey. Which brings us right back to our original question. If $1 million is no longer the benchmark for feeling rich, what is? What's the new magic number? Well, according to recent survey data, Americans have a new number in mind. On average, people now believe they need a net worth of $5.3 million to feel truly financially secure. The goalposts haven't just shifted, they've been moved to a whole new stadium.
Which leaves us with a final thought. After all this analysis, maybe true wealth isn't a number at all. Maybe it's simply the freedom to stop counting.